Okay, I'm gonna. Here's my. Sorry. I can't mute myself. All right, I'm gonna mute myself and then share, and then throw it over to Robin to start us off.
Robin, I think
Unmute Robin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Scott. All right, and we've got the slides going now. I don't think they're in slideshow mode. And for whatever reason, that's not working. But anyway, I just want to welcome everyone to our first webinar officially for the whole division on pesticide updates. We tried this last year to
Robin, you're muted. I don't know if you accidentally muted yourself.
I must have. Thank you, Tina. Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. And we're still not in presenter mode, but I just want to welcome everyone, and I'm not sure where I left off. This is our first webinar that we've done as a full division. And I'm really pleased to have my entire team of managers here to present a little bit of an update on each of the divisions and what's been going on in our agency in this division over the last year. I'm really excited to have all of you here. I'm excited for us to be able to continue doing webinars like this until we do get a new pesticide advisory board set up, or whether that happens or not. We will have this as a form of communication, regular communication with our stakeholders. And so I'm excited to be able to do that. Next slide, Savannah. And just for those who don't know me, my background is I've worked with Pesticide Management Division starting in 1988, way back then, as an investigator out of Eastern Washington. I also worked in the registration program. I worked on fertilizer compliance as well as registration in the tonnage program. I was also a compliance area manager for a number of years here in Western Washington, starting in 2008. Then became registration program manager, and then about 5 years ago became the assistant director. Many of you do know me. Those who interact with the agency know me. So I've been around for a while. I have an amazing team of leaders who I'm going to introduce to you. The first program that I'm going to talk about is Pesticide Compliance. And with that, just to know that Washington State Department of Agriculture and the Pesticide Management Division is the state lead agency for all pesticide laws, state and federal, here in the state of Washington. We are the lead. Pesticide Compliance is the program within our division that does inspections, investigations, technical assistance, and licensing and continuing education support. They support the licensing program. In addition, we have a separate pesticide licensing and recertification program led by Tina Zimmerman, or Christina, who is in the background making sure you all get admitted. Thank you, Tina. That program does certification of pesticide licensees through exams, development of exams, accreditation of continuing education courses, which we call recertification. And they do that through evaluation of the courses and monitoring. They also do have assistance with the manual development with the PSEPs, such as WSU, OSU, PERC, and other education institutions. So a really important program within our division. If any of you have a license, that's the program who works with you on that. Then we have registration services. The registration services program is now led by Brent Perry, who will present in a few minutes. That program does pesticide product registrations, fertilizer product registrations, bulk fertilizer distribution licensing. So all bulk fertilizers are regulated through that program. Also fertilizer tonnage or inspection fees and fertilizer compliance. And that is making sure that all those facilities are properly built, they're running properly, that the samples they take meet requirements and their guarantees. So kind of a large program. Pesticide product registration registers over 14,000 pesticides in the state of Washington. Fertilizer products number over 7,000. Then there's the Technical Services and Education Program that is led by Ofelio Borges. He is based out of the Yakima office. That is the newest of the division programs that separated out of the licensing program a few years back. And that is because we were asked and also felt the need to expand our ability to do more education and outreach, especially with farm workers. That program does outreach and education for WPS, the worker protection standards, the Train the Trainer, where they train trainers that train farm workers and handlers and things throughout the ag industry. Also, they do pesticide handler training, best management practice training, which is outdoor training that they do with special equipment to teach farm workers, handlers, and growers how to properly maintain machines and make applications properly at the right rate. They also do on-farm technical assistance, which is similar to BMPs, but more specific in that it works with an individual grower on site with their equipment and helps them to calibrate and configure their machines to make sure that they're properly applying things, especially with air blast sprayers, which can be difficult to calibrate and configure. And then that program, Technical Services and Education, also has the Waste Pesticide Disposal Program. These programs within TSE, as we call it, are non-regulatory. They are there for outreach and education to assist farmers, growers, farm workers, and handlers and different applicators to make sure they're doing things properly under the WPS rules. Then the last program I'll mention, which is not a pesticide program, but it is part of our division and has been for about 8 years, is called the Dairy Nutrient Management Program. It's a water quality program that manages all dairies in the state of Washington and their waste, or what they call nutrients, to be reused and make sure that that stays out of waterways. So a really important program that is a sister program within our division that we work with. Next slide. And I didn't introduce our wonderful compliance program manager, and that's Scott Nielsen, and he will present on the compliance program. Welcome, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Hopefully I'm coming through okay. Anybody got a thumbs up just to show that my voice is coming through? There we go. Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Robin. I'm Scott Nielsen, and I'm the new program manager for the Pesticide Compliance Division and or program. And I'm replacing Tim Schultz, who had been in that role for a long time. I'll address that in a minute. I wanted to put my contact information up there, and it's snielsen@agr.wa.gov, and my phone number is 509-990-6518. A lot of you already have that information, as I saw the names popping up on the screen. I came to this role having been the case review officer for quite a few years. Prior to that, I was an area manager covering the eastern third of the state from basically the Columbia River over to the Idaho line. And prior to that, I was a field investigator for compliance out in the field. So we will be replacing my role as a case review officer this fall. We'll be selecting from our own staff. We'll be replacing a case review officer position. And with some other changes that we have going on, some of you might know Aaron Brown. He's covered northeastern Washington as an investigator for about 10 years. He's become the new area supervisor for South Central Washington, replacing Tom Hoffman. And that's a large area, the south central part of our state that Aaron is now the supervisor for, ranges all the way from, Dayton and Waitsburg and Walla Walla, all the way across through Tri-Cities up toward Yakima Valley and Kittitas Valley. So very large area, intensive ag in portions of that area. Next slide, please. I do want to acknowledge that with the retirement of Tim Schultz here on September 30th, like I said, whose place I'm taking as the program manager, we're losing like 33 years of critical institutional knowledge. Tim had been around for a long time, started out as a field investigator out of Yakima, helped create the area offices that we have at Moses Lake, Spokane, Wenatchee. We're working on one in the Tri-Cities area now. And Tim just had a tremendous wealth of knowledge and history as it relates to pesticide issues. He'd been around from the ALR issue, the Badger Canyon particle drift issue, obviously the area-wide sensitivity that we have for grapes on phenoxy type herbicides, and even was instrumental in early on, like when clopyralid first came out and was being used on mint. And they found if you rotated to potatoes, you'd still see some carryover there. So Dow had to come in and modify their plant back on their labels and things. But just a lot of issues over the years that he had dealt with. So big shoes to fill there. Also, as shown in the lower left there, with the retirement of Tom Hoffman on August 31st, we're losing the same sort of knowledge. Tom had been an extension agent in Kittitas County, Whitman County, Adams County, among other places before he came to work for us, and had really been knowledgeable for us in fumigation and fertigation systems, everything to do with irrigated agriculture up and down the basin. So again, big shoes to fill with the loss there. Next slide, please. Just for an update, we're sort of in a time of transition for the compliance program with retirements and other people leaving and things. We've got a lot of positions to fill, and we currently have 3 vacant field investigator positions to fill, and likely a 4th once we move somebody into that case review officer role. We also have 3 newly created positions to fill, primarily in Central Washington, related to the 2021 legislative and industry supported request for increased compliance activity in the field. So if you know somebody who wants to go to work for the Department of Ag, certainly some announcements will be coming out for various positions. Next slide, please. Since I'm working on the legislative report and everything for the last fiscal year for the state, I just thought I'd run some numbers for the group of what we'd accomplished during that time. In that time, our field investigators had done 233 inspections. Of those, 58 were WPS inspections, 48 were use inspections, both agricultural and non-ag settings. We did 32 marketplace inspections, 26 applicator or commercial applicator types inspections, which are primarily records inspections and storage inspections and equipment and things. We did 19 dealer inspections where pesticides are sold and distributed, 5 school application and records inspections, 3 producer establishment inspections, and those are wherever pesticides are manufactured or repackaged. And we do those under EPA credentials. And so we did a lot of those. And 58 cannabis grow operation inspections, which we began doing just a couple of years after I-502 had passed to regulate the pesticide use in that industry as well. So next slide, please. Thank you. Just looking a little bit at the compliance activities as a result of those inspections. And I'll talk more about this later when I talk about penalties and things later today. But of that, we issued 108 notices of correction where violations were found, and but people need to make corrections to what they were doing. We did issue 7 notices of intent as a result of those inspections, where we had civil penalties and some sort of maybe a licensing action. We issued 33 advisory letters for minor things that were found. And then in 85 of those instances, we didn't find any violations. So that's good. Next slide. I want to address a little bit too, of course, our other responsibility isn't just out doing routine inspections and things, but it's responding to complaints. We receive lots of complaints of alleged pesticide misuse or exposures, maybe crop damage or report of loss. And so we get lots of different types of complaints that come in. And we've got a responsibility to respond within 48 hours to cases that come in. And for human exposure cases, it's within a day. It's basically immediately. We need to try to respond to human exposure cases that come in. So when we look at that, we had 74 of these types of complaints that came in of allegations of misuse, where we had enough evidence to open, or they were bona fide enough to open an investigation. And of those, we had 15 issued notices of corrections for a first-time offense. We did 3 notices of intent for civil penalties and or licensing actions as a result of what we found. 6 advisory letters were issued, and 43 of those cases where no violations or no action were found. I probably should address that final one a little bit, just so everybody understands that a lot of times we might be investigating a case of, say, a crop damage or landscape damage, and it turns out to not be pesticide related. It could be something like frost damage or insect damage or something like that. Other times we might have that a pesticide application was made, like a PCO application or something, to inside a home for ants or spiders. Somebody might have a negative reaction to that, but we can't find that the applicator actually did anything wrong. No violation of label or our other state laws and rules. Maybe somebody had an allergic reaction or something. So there are different things that can come out of all those inspections that we do. Next slide, please. One of the newer things that we've implemented just really about 1.5 years ago is we're trying to get out and do more surveillance types observations, where we're looking for potential situations where we could have drift. It could be a ground rig type application, could be an aircraft, could be a other handgun application in a landscape setting, or it could be an air blast type application like is shown here. During the spring and summer of 21, we did 10 of these drift observations. We're trying to do a quicker ag use inspection where we respond to it in just 4 to 7 days and try to get it wrapped up. And so we're trying to look and maybe prevent drift cases from happening, or potential crop damage from happening by warning and cautioning an applicator that their application could be drifting. During this last spring, we'd only done 5 of those drift observations. We're really hoping to increase those in the future. That's certainly going to be a focus of our staff all across the state, is looking for different types of surveillance and drift observation settings out in the field. Next. Kind of wanted to end on a positive note, something that I wanted to address. We in the fall, there's lots of soil fumigation type applications that take place, and these are the soil fumigant products are applied either shank or through chemigation to the soil, and they operate as a gas within the soil to properly control nematodes and diseases and even weeds. Usually pre-plant to a potato crop for next spring, and if applied improperly, those things can off gas and can cause eye irritation and nose and throat irritation to anybody in the area. So they're serious chemicals, and but this fall they were applied to a lot of irrigated circles, lots of fields, and knock on wood, we didn't have any complaints of off-target off-gassing or anything that we had to look at here in September, October, and early November, which is really a big primary part of the soil fumigant season. So I want to kind of acknowledge the fumigation stewardship, safety, and training meetings that are put on and sponsored by industry each year, and we participate in. I think they have a real positive impact on the applicators, really taking good precautions in site prep and buffer zones and things like that for their applications. So I think that was my final slide. I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Cool, and I just wanted to pause briefly and check if we have any questions in the chat, Tina.
I do not see any questions in the chat yet.
All right, then Tina, you're up.
Oh, okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Tina Zimmerman. I'm the program manager for the licensing and recertification program. I've been here for about 5.5 years now, overseeing the certification and continuing certification of all of our applicators, dealer managers, consultants, and structural pest inspectors. Prior to this, I was at the Hawaii Department of Agriculture for 12.5 years. I oversaw the registration and technical review unit with the pesticide program there, doing pesticide registrations, SLNs, emergency exemptions, and experimental use permits. So it was a change coming here to Washington, both climate-wise and work-wise, but it's been a learning experience. And I just wanted to share with all of you some of the activities we've been up to in the licensing and recertification program. Can we go to the next slide, Savannah? Okay, for all of you that have licenses or have employees that need to be licensed, renewal season is here. October 4th, we sent out an email notification to all licensees that have renewed in the last 2 years, that are eligible for renewal and have a valid email address. A notification and a link to our online portal, which was open from that date. This is something new we started last year. Prior to that, we were only emailing commercial applicators, but we found that this email notification kind of increased participation in the online renewal. So in 2018, just to give you an idea about that, 2018, there was only a 25% participation in online renewal. And since then, I think last year, we had a 58% participation in online renewal. So we are hoping that that trend will continue, especially considering our staffing shortages. On November 14th, which is next week already, we'll be sending out the paper renewal packets to everyone who have not renewed yet. We didn't get quite as much participation in the last month as we were hoping, but I think that will continue in the coming months. So if any of you should be receiving that in the mail next week, if you don't, please give us a call. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, also for those of you who still need credits for this calendar year in order to recertify for 2023, there are still a lot of options for you to earn credit. As you can see here, there are over 450 course sessions available for you to earn credit at. Most of them open courses, meaning that anyone is allowed to register and participate and earn credit. As long as you earn that credit by 11:59 p.m. December 31st, we can get your credits in and get you recertified for next year. I did add a link at the bottom of this page. If you're not sure what your credit status is, you can just go to that link and punch in your full name or your license number and be able to see your credit report. I just wanted to note that a lot of the prominent courses available this year on-site, open to anyone to register, are courses like the Inland Empire Golf Course Superintendent Association, the Washington State Crop Improvement Association, the Pacific Northwest Vegetable Association annual meeting, and of course the WSU recertification courses. Can we go to the next slide, Savannah? Okay, so I just threw this in there because I wanted to kind of let all of you know that there are already 2023 courses reviewed, accredited, and approved and available for you to register for next year. Most of them internet on demand, of course. A lot of these have been fully reviewed by staff and to assure that the content they're presenting qualifies for credit. So just anytime you want to look more into the courses available, please shoot us an email. I had my email address up earlier, but I'll repeat that at the end of my presentation, just so that if you want access to this data, you can search for courses on your own. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so the CNT, the Certification and Training Implementation Timeframe. So the CNT rule, which was passed by EPA in 2017, is awaiting all the states to have their state plans approved to comply with that updated rule. So Washington State Department of Agriculture, we submitted our updated state plan, or our proposed state plan, to EPA in March of 2020. After a lot of back and forth with EPA on just clarifying some of the things in our state plan, we submitted our final version in September this year. We expect to receive final approval from EPA this month. I think we were told late this month to expect approval. So fingers crossed. So we did propose statute changes that will be presented this coming January in legislature. So those will be very limited statute changes to comply with the certification and training rule. Those basically are adding or clarifying definitions, increasing the minimum age for private applicators to 18, and that's to comply with the federal rule. We do not have any private applicators currently that are under 18, so the impact should be low there. And we also added authority to establish standards for the direct supervision of non-certified applicators. These standards will actually come later when we update our rules. So rule updates, which will come after that, provided that the statute changes go through this coming spring. Rule updates that will follow will include updated competency standards or enhanced competency standards for all applicators, redefining and streamlining categories. Those are the two main, the biggest updates that will have the broadest range of impacts on everyone. And if anyone needs more details on that, I can certainly provide that separately. Okay. Savannah, can we, oh, don't go to the next slide. Sorry, I apologize. Can you go back? Sorry about that. Okay, so I just wanted to add in a clarification here. So licensees their recertification cycles will not change with the CNT updates. Everyone will remain on whatever research cycle they're on now. We are hoping to have updated standards, meaning updated exams, updated options for you to meet the new standards in the beginning of 2025. All licensees will have up until the end of their current recertification cycle at that time to meet the new standards. So that's why I added this asterisk here on the last bullet. I wanted to make sure all of you knew that this does not mean every licensee has until January 2030 to meet the new standards. Whatever recertification cycle you are on, you will need to meet the new standards by the end of that. So say at 2025, we start requiring you to comply with the new standards. If your research cycle ends in 2028, you only have until 2028, December 31st of that year, to meet the new standards. The way we intend to expect licensees to meet the new standards will give multiple options. For example, if you have a weed control endorsement to meet the new standards, you will have one of three options. You can either take a quiz that only covers the standards you are missing from the last time you took the certification exam for that endorsement, take a course that only covers those missing standards as well, or you can take the new exam. So those will be your three options, just to give people a lot of leeway in terms of how to meet those new standards. And if anyone has any questions on that, I can answer that at the end of my portion. So Savannah, can we go to the next slide? So that brings us to computer-based testing. So earlier this year, we updated our rule language to allow us to contract with a vendor to kind of have computer-based testing available to all of you. We will not be replacing paper-based testing. We are adding computer-based testing as an option for all licensees or potential licensees. So if you can see here with the current rule language, the examination fee for paper-based testing remains the same. Computer-based testing, we set a cap. This does not mean that exams will be $65 an exam. We set a cap so that it gave us a little bit more leeway when we do work with a vendor and we have to renew our contract. If there are changes or increases to the cost, we don't have to go back to rule again. But this gives us the authority to do that. So I am currently working with our contract specialist to finalize our request for proposals to put out this month for computer-based testing vendors, and we are hoping to have that available. I don't want to make any promises, but summer next year is our goal, and staff are already in the process of updating exams so that they can be transitioned over. We can go to the next slide. I just threw this in there because I'm not sure if all of you are aware. About a year and a half ago, we created a new web page that you can get to from the licensing web pages, where we kind of list all of the webinars that we have had or will have. We do include recordings of those webinars that you can access with transcription or even like a PDF copy of the presentation. You can just email. The URL is pretty long, so I didn't want to put that there, but you can email this address here, pest license updates @agr.wa.gov, and we can send you the link to that page if you don't have it. And that way, anytime you miss a webinar, you will have access to that recording. Okay, can we go to the next slide?
That is your last slide.
Oh, I think I didn't have a contact. I had one more, it was a contact slide at the end, but that's okay. My contact information is czimmerman@agr.wa.gov. And my phone number is 360-902-2150. I will also put that in the chat for you. So it looks like we have one question in the chat from Chris Sensky. It says, can you review the new research standards again? How many classes or credits needed in the cycle for each endorsement? Will an ag weed class qualify for an ornamental weed endorsement? So, okay, so there's several questions in there. So the credit requirement will not change. So if everyone besides all the private applicators, you still be required to have 40 credits. There are no category specific credits that will be required. I know that was something that EPA kind of presented in the beginning in 2017. they went back on that because a lot of the states are not able to meet that requirement. I think it'll be very difficult for licensees to meet that requirement. It's already hard enough to get classes sometimes. So no, there's no category specific requirement. Nothing's changed in that regard. When I spoke about streamlining categories, that was specifically about the weed and the insect and disease categories. So as most of you know, if you're licensed or have licensees that you employ, we have 3 different weed exams or categories and 2 different insect and disease. So we are combining those, so there will be just 1 weed category and 1 insect and disease category. So for those of you that just have ornamental weed, to meet the new standards, you would just have to take that short quiz or class to meet the new standards, and you would be assigned the general weed category. Same thing for insect and disease. I hope that answers your question, Chris. But Savannah, I don't see any other questions though.
Okay, great. Well, then we'll
Okay.
have Brent Perry up with registration service.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Savannah. Once again, my name is Brent Perry. I am the Registration Services Program Manager, and today I'm going to give a brief update on the program. Like Robin said, the Registration Services Program, we register fertilizers, pesticides, and we also house the Fertilizer Compliance Program. Just to give you a little bit of background there. Okay, Savannah, next slide. So changes to the Registration Services Program, there have been quite a few. Previously, Kelly Davis was the program manager. Kelly has accepted a policy position within the division. And with her moving on, I have come on to the position. I came on January 1. I come from the Fertilizer Compliance Program, which, like I say, is housed within the within the registration program. I've been there in excess of 15 years, closer to 22. My background is production agriculture. I came from the retail ag chemical industry, worked in it for 15, 16, 17 years or so, managing a couple of facilities. Another change to our program is we have a new registration services supervisor. That's Matthew Densley. Matt comes to us from, once again, the Fertilizer Compliance Program and the Waste Disposal Program. He's a waste disposal specialist, been around for in excess of 10 years, brings a wealth of knowledge about registration and fertilizer compliance to the program. One side note, one of the themes that we have within the programs are finding staff. And I would like to point out that we have a staff member, Shannon Lumsden, who has been with Registration Services for 52 years and counting. Shannon is absolutely a wealth of knowledge and essential to the success of this program. So kind of interesting. That's a long-term employee. Thank you, Shannon. Next slide, Savannah. The registration team is growing and having to adapt. One of the common themes that you've heard from the previous 2 presenters is the ability to find staff. We have struggled with that as well. Registration is very technical. It requires a background. It isn't something you can train somebody to do in a couple of days and turn them loose. So we've come up with a process of hiring in training positions. So the idea is to have staff work into these positions at a relaxed progress, so they can get a complete understanding, and they'll be in place when we need to fill vacancies. So this is so far proved to be a very valuable, very successful program. We have some candidates within the program we are very happy with and anxious to see them positioned within our program. With that said and done, the program is still struggling to find qualified staff. Currently, the program has 1 vacant registration program position and 2 vacant fertilizer compliance positions. We hoped and still hope to have them filled by the end of the year. But once again, it's hard to find qualified staff. Another change to the program, how the program is adapting, the division toxicologist is now housed within registration services. This allows for a quicker toxicological review of products. And really, and the goal of the program is to decrease registration timeframes. And this has allowed us to do that. The collaboration's been great. And really, we're moving the needle and we're collecting much more data and meeting our goals of trying to get things processed in a more timely manner. With that said and done, just an FYI, 30% of the registration staff will be retiring in 5 years or less. So once again, this isn't something that's going to go away. We need to continue to grow and adapt and position ourselves for the future and hopefully be able to still meet our goals of decreasing timelines for registration. Next slide, Savannah. One of the ways that we are really embracing on meeting our timelines and increasing our efficiency is technology. This is something that has been a long time coming for registration services. The program bit the bullet and jumped in. With all the other obligations that the program has, staff have still gone in and really supported a registration build. That registration build we call Walter, which is the Washington Agricultural Licensing Tonnage and Registration database. This build began quite a while ago, back in 2017. We've struggled with business analysts, once again, having employees or staff to aid us in developing this. We've gone through multiple business analysts, but we are making progress. The impact, we believe, once the program is completely in place, is going to be significant. With that said and done, we are live with the fertilizer registration module. That module is complete. This is what we call an internal module. That means staff are using it one place that they can go and for the registration process to find all the documents, to process, to review, to have history of, as opposed to our past paper methods and actual file cabinets. So once again, that's been a very positive thing. The fertilizer compliance module is completely developed. It is in the final testing phase. We have business analysts that are actually in user testing right now. We believe this is going to also increase our efficiency. And not only is it going to be more efficient for gathering samples and processing inspections, but the cost savings because of the ability for us to target areas that need to be targeted where we have issues, as opposed to just the shotgun effect of driving down the highway and finding products as we come across them. So once again, much more efficient process. Fertilizer tonnage. Fertilizer tonnage or inspection fees, as Robin mentioned, is the primary funding source for the compliance program. These programs are local fees. We don't get any tax-based money out of this. So tonnage is important to fund the program. Well, these inspection fees or tonnage used to take, there's 2 processes a year, and it would take up to 6 months to process a single period, a single 6-month period. With the advent of Walter, we're going to go live with our first tonnage collection in the database this coming January. And we believe that we're going to reduce the time frame from that process from 6 months down to an estimated 1 month. So once again, technology, embracing technology is going to really help the efficiency of the program. Bulk distribution licenses. A bulk distribution license is for anyone in the state of Washington or outside the state of Washington who distributes a bulk unpackaged fertilizer into the state. A license is required for that. This licensing process, previous to our Walter build, would take days, a month to process. So that process now has been reduced down to minutes. So common theme here, once again, technology is allowing us to become more and more efficient. With that said and done, the final phase of our Walter build is the pesticide registration module. It is in the initial development now. We have transitioned from our business analysts that were active on our fertilizer build to a new business analyst that's going to adapt the fertilizer portion to the pesticide portion. So we essentially have the blueprint already made, and we're just going through at this time business requirements to take the current process and adapt it to the fertilizer process, which will put it into the pesticide registration mode. Once again, improving efficiency. Next slide, Savannah. With that said and done, registration and technology are going to go hand in hand. One of the things that has occurred and should have occurred a long time ago, in our point of view, should have been online specifications for all aspects of registration. With that said and done, the online specifications are about 90% of the way built, and we expect to be launched sometime in 2023. Spring might be a little bit aggressive on that, but we're still looking at 23. With that said, not only online renewal and online registration, but online payment, something that has been needed for a long time. The technology out there exists. Our developer estimates it'll take about a week for him to write the code. What we're up against here is state of Washington requires security from OFM, Office of Financial Management, and Department of Enterprise Services. They estimate 3 to 9 months of security testing before we can go live with that. But once again, we're looking at this from an efficiency point of view of having online registration, online renewal, and online payment. We think will revolutionize the registration process. The pesticide registration module began October 21st. Like I said, we replaced a couple of business analysts. The new registration module will be adapted to the fertilizer registration process. Once again, that's kind of redundant. What's interesting about this, because of the work that we've already put into the registration process of fertilizer, the ability to adapt it to pesticide should be reduced to 8 to 10 months. We're pretty excited about seeing this come online in the end of 2023. And once again, we believe that technology will significantly impact the registration timeline. Next slide, Savannah. Okay, that's a very quick, brief update. There's my contact information. If there's any questions, I will be willing to answer those at this time.
I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised. I think there's a way for folks that have called in to raise their hand as well. Savannah, I'm not sure if you wanted to relay that.
Yeah, I think it's *5.
Mm-hmm.
I can raise your hand. But yeah, if there's no questions, okay, we'll move on to technical services and education.
Very good. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I thought my first slide was different, but I'll start with this one then. So good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's a great opportunity for me. Appreciate it. So during my presentation, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what has been happening in the technical service and education program. By the way, I do manage the technical service and education program for our division. And yeah, like I said, I will give you a brief overview of the things that have been happening in our program for the last couple of years, some of the challenges that we've been facing, and also I will be presenting some numbers that represent the achievements of the program for the fiscal year 2022. So with that, I want to say that we have been facing a lot of challenges, just like everyone else. One of them has been facing the COVID-19 restrictions. During the last couple of years, we had to move our training programs from being hands-on, using a lot of hands-on methods, to deliver them virtually. It has been quite a change for us, and not only for us, but also for the people that receive our trainings. So, and every single time that we alter, that we change our training curriculum, we have to seek certification from EPA. So it's a process. We had to reduce the class size to about 50%. That has cost us to double the number of workshops that we offer in order to give a training opportunity to the typical number of people that attend our programs. So, and we're talking about 7-hour workshops. We tested different platforms, and we finally were able to use Teams, this same platform that we're using right now. But the biggest challenge had to do with our audience, the people that we serve. Most of those individuals have limited access to computer and to internet services. So it was very, very challenging. I have to say that all the training partners and sponsors that we work with played a very important role in making our training programs accessible to that community. Again, very challenging, but at the end, we were able to overcome most of the challenges, supported by our training partners and sponsors. So for every single event during COVID-19, we had to come up and implement a COVID-19 prevention plan that had to be followed at every single event. And that brought a lot of extra work. Next slide, please. We'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So in regards of numbers, achievements that for fiscal year 2022, our handler training program we were able to do 35 events in person, in live webinars. I would say that 80% of our live webinar, or 80% of our workshops were live webinars, and about 20% in person, in which again, we had to implement a COVID-19 prevention plan. We were able to train over 1,500 pesticide handlers just for this program, over 1,500 pesticide handlers that were employed by 256 agricultural establishments. That was quite an achievement, considering that we had significant challenges, again, due to COVID-19 and due to the loss of some important members of our team. I will talk a little bit more about that and towards the end of my presentation. Next slide, please. So in our train the trainer program, in this program was created because we can't train every single worker, every single pesticide handler that work in Washington State's agriculture. So we created this train the trainer program back in 2002, and we've been training trainers to do their own trainings we figure those trainers have a lot of advantages over state trainers. They know their people, they know their equipment, they know the specific risks that they have at their operations. So we have a tremendous pool of trainers that are doing their own training on site. But this year, this 2022, we were able to conduct 3 two-day train-to-trainer workshops attended by 68 people who are employed by 44 agricultural establishments. We also created a WPS train-to-trainer refresher. We did 3 events attended by 54 people employed by 40 agricultural establishments. And I am proud to say that we worked in partnership with the Department of Labor and Industries to offer 2 train-to-trainer respirator workshops. So the idea of this respirator train-to-trainer workshop is that people can conduct their own fit testings on site, that they would have the knowledge, the training to manage the respiratory protection plan. So yeah, we trained 38 people coming from 23 agricultural establishments. Next slide, please. And in terms of, Robin was speaking about our air blast calibration programs. And in 2022, we visited 5 different orchard or different agricultural establishments to provide technical assistance on how to properly calibrate their air blast sprayers. This program utilizes their own equipment and their own planting systems. So we come to their place and we conduct a 4-hour technical assistance. So we did 5 of those this year, attended by 34 people that were working for 8 establishments. And we also did 3 air blast sprayer calibration best management practice workshops. 2 of them were conducted in Hood River in partnership with the Hood River Soil and Water Conservation District, and 1 was conducted up north in partnership with Maldonado Orchards. We're hoping to do more of this type of workshops in our Wenatchee area. Right now, I am visiting growers in the Brewster area to try to establish connections and do a more aggressive campaign to train more people on sprayer calibration north of Wenatchee. Next slide. We also have a very strong Spanish private applicator pre-license course. We did 7 courses this year, attended by 289 people coming from 104 agricultural establishments. This program helps people who wish to obtain their private applicator license. And I have to say that most of these courses were conducted online. People seem to feel more comfortable attending these workshops virtually than in person. Our passing rates were higher. People don't have to travel during winter, and they feel more comfortable participating overall. So we intend to go that route. We intend to do more and more online pre-license courses. And we also participated in 7 recertification events attended by over 700 people. Next slide, please. In terms of our waste disposal program, we were also forced to work differently. We were not able to conduct waste pesticide collection events as we used to. due to COVID-19. And so we decided to just do direct pickups. We would drag our contractor and we would go directly to agricultural sites to pick up products. So in fiscal year 2022, we collected almost 100,000 pounds of waste pesticides and served 176 customers. So quite the achievement there, considering all the restrictions that we were facing. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in terms of staffing in our program, we have also faced significant challenges. We lost some very important members of our team, members that were had been in our program for several years. But I am proud to report that we now have a very strong team that are committed to provide quality service to all of you. And within the last 2 months, we onboarded 2 more staff members, and we are in the process of hiring 2 more. We have 3 more vacancies to fill, and we'll be ready for this training season that already started. So this program, as Robin mentioned, is a very young program. It became a standalone program in 2015. It's got some really well-established programs, some other programs that are fairly new, and others that are being developed. So we are working on developing new tools, especially for our on-site technical assistance program. We are finding out that for the most part, people are finding calibration practices to be very complicated. So we will be developing tools to be left with them, tools that would be very practical, very easy to use so that they can do the transition and make the changes. We are working with the Washington State Tree Fruit Association in developing what we call the Agricultural Leadership Program. It is a great program. We are doing, as of now, we're doing the second class of our fall course. The idea is to have supervisors and managers with a lot of leadership skills that could be inspirational, that could see requirements as opportunities, that could inspire their people, to work in a safe environment. I strongly believe that's going to be a very strong, very helpful program for our industry. So please send your questions if you have any. This is the last slide of my presentation. I have been with this program, or been with the Department of Ag, for 21 years. Prior to that, I worked as a migrant farm worker, and I am a farm owner as well now. So very proud to be the manager of this program, and very proud to lead a strong team, and very proud to serve you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Afilio. Do we have any questions, Tina?
I don't see any questions in the chat at this time.
Okay, then we'll move on to administration. I believe Robin is presenting that section.
So I'm back with you for a quick update on what's going on in administration for the Pesticide Management Division. I also posted for everybody the agenda. You may have that, but I know for me, I always forget where am I at with an agenda. So I will briefly update you on what's going on with administration. Then we have a break at 10:30. Then we come back at 10:45 to talk about the rulemaking on the penalty matrix overview and update with Scott Nielsen. And then we'll have a question and answer session immediately following his overview of the penalty matrix. I want to thank my managers for their great presentations. But anyway, let's go ahead with this. The first thing that I wanted to mention is we don't have a lot going on with legislation this year, and I'm thankful for that. We have had several actually very busy legislative sessions since I started. Definitely was wearing skates the last 5 years, pretty much every year. It's been pretty crazy. But this year is quieter so far. And we only have 2 decision packages that we submitted to the director's office that were approved and were sent over to the governor's office. The first is to amend our statute, as Tina mentioned, related to certification and training. And this is to just adopt the things in the federal CNT rules that were adopted by EPA in 2017. We are required to be at least as restrictive as EPA. However, there isn't a lot of change. A lot of this is technical changes, as Tina mentioned, in the definitions and some other key areas where our statutes read a little differently than the federal rule. We are working really hard with all of you and our other partners such as WSU to make sure that when we roll out any changes related to this federal rule change, that most things will be very smooth for our licensees and that there won't be a lot of hiccups in how you have to deal with this. As Tina mentioned, there are some additional certification categories, or not categories, but I can't think of the word, but there's some additional requirements that they added, but they are core requirements. They are basic things that most of you already do. It's just not spelled out in our current exams. And so I think updating as that comes through will be a fairly easy thing for most all of you. So anyway, that will only happen, however, in the legislative session this year if EPA completes their review and approves our state plan. To do the CNT rule updates in statute, we need to be confident that our plan that EPA is reviewing and finalizing the review of, that it's ready to go and that they agree with what we have proposed. If they haven't given us that by the end of this year, we won't go to legislation this year. We will push that off for another year. So we are waiting on EPA for that final approval first. Next slide. So the other program I mentioned at the beginning, Dairy Nutrient Management Program, again, is not one of our pesticide programs, but is a very important part of our division. They fit in very well as they are regulatory as we are environmental regulations. They regulate dairies and dairy nutrients to make sure those nutrients are properly reused and contained in the way they need to be and don't go off site and infiltrate waterways or any kind of discharges. There has been an ongoing groundwater management area in Eastern Washington, the lower Yakima Valley. This has been going on and managed by EPA for a number of years. There's additional pressure being applied to the entire state. Department of Health, who has authority over drinking water, Department of Ecology, who is in charge of the Clean Water Act, as well as some other local agencies, the Yakima County Environmental Health Division, as well as their Air Quality Authority, and others are involved, as well as Department of Ag, related specifically to dairies and dairy nutrients. And so we have proposed, related to that groundwater management area in the lower Yakima Valley, some additional things to hopefully continue to prevent nitrate pollution offsite from dairies specifically. That's the only place we really have authority at this time. And so we are asking for an increased capacity for technical assistance and enforcement delivered by our dairy nutrient management program to livestock farms. Additionally, we're asking for an increased capacity for crop-specific nutrient management assistance, and establishing a long-term and sustainable funding source for nutrient management education and technical assistance. Some of this will also go towards our natural resource and assessment program, to make sure that they are working with us in PMD and Pesticide Management Division to make sure that all that we need to do and have the authority and capacity to do can be done to help those in Lower Yakima Valley to reduce any additional nitrate pollution, along with the work that Department of Health and Ecology need to do. Next slide. And then I wanted to update you on where we have gotten to in our division related to the additional funding that came through in 2021 legislative session. There was an increase in registration fees for pesticide registrations and fertilizer registrations, and a slight increase for tonnage fees as well. And there was also a slight increase for some of the pesticide licenses. Out of that funding thus far, we have hired 2 positions in administration. One was the communication and outreach coordinator, Savannah Richard, who is working with us. She was hired last April. She's doing amazing things. She is in charge of our website updates. So if you see some cool new ways that our website works, some cleanups, more photos, a little more easier navigation, thank you, Savannah, for that. All of us are providing information to her, but she really knows what she's doing in that area and is really helping us clean up and improve our website. Additionally, she has worked on some publications. She's working on some online forms that will help all of you reach out to us in things like reserving license testing appointments with us. Also, there's a complaint form from compliance that they're working on. We hope to develop some newsletters like we used to use in pesticide management that we'll provide through this listserv. Developing this listserv, getting it going, doing webinars such as this will become a regular thing of our division. Not too often, hopefully, certainly at least twice a year, we'll do something major like this where it's all of our programs, and then maybe smaller webinars throughout the year as needed. So we'll try to keep you updated through this listserv. Please share that with others that you know that want to know what's going on in our division. And of course, you can continue to reach out to us in other ways. But anyway, so that's one position. Additionally, I hired a policy assistant, Kelly Davis, who couldn't be here today, but Kelly is helping with legislation management, division rules management, division stakeholder work and outreach, and then any initiatives and emerging issues that we have going on. As you all know, pesticides are kind of a sexy topic out there. It's popular in different ways throughout the political arena, the media. And so a lot of things can come up and be proposed that we work on internally. And it gets pretty overwhelming when you have a lot of things coming from different areas all at once, which is kind of how it's been the last, well, about 10 years. We did have Joel Congeser doing that before he was program manager for compliance. And so it's been with a sigh of relief that I was able to welcome Kelly into our administration program to help me with all the things going on with legislation and rules and other initiatives. The other thing we made happen early in January was we moved the toxicologist, George Tuttle, from the Natural Resource Assessment section into registration services. He was already working and spending a lot of his time reviewing new active ingredients, helping with review of different ingredients and products that were going to be used for 24Cs, special local need registrations, Section 18s, anything that might be used in aquatics. And so now he is fully within our division and works with us all the time in registration and other programs as needed as our toxicologist in our division. Licensing, although they didn't get enough funding to truly add additional staff members, they've changed one of the positions that they had, or a couple of the divisions, or I'm sorry, a couple of the positions they had previously. They're currently recruiting for a licensing specialist that can assist with exams and manual development. They're hoping to place that person in Eastern Washington, but we're really searching for someone who has bilingual abilities, who can write and speak Spanish. And so it's been a little harder to recruit for that. Along with the science background and degree requirements for a licensing specialist. But we're hopeful that we will find someone to help on the east side with some of the more specific license sessions we have over there, and help with exam development and other things we're doing here, and just provide a little more stability to both east and west for a full licensing program. Compliance is adding 3 additional Central Washington investigators. They're currently replacing some of their positions that they've lost, as well as recruiting for these 3 additional positions. And so we've got several vacancies going on. I can't say we've filled all of these, but we are trying. And I think we'll have some good responses. It seems like we're getting more applicants currently than we were about a month ago. So I'm excited about that. As Ophelio mentioned, the TSC program is recruiting for 3 additional trainers, 2 in Central Washington, 1 in Western Washington, and then he'll also be adding a communication and outreach position to his program, as they do so much writing, their curriculums, they produce manuals, and then also a management analyst to help with kind of the infrastructure and management of all things administrative within that program, including maybe a database to track handlers and trainers and other things that currently it's really hard to track if you don't have your own program. Next slide. And as I talked about, the new listserv that we have that provided the information for this webinar for our entire division is up and running. You can find it under AGR pesticide updates. And currently, in lieu of reestablishing the pesticide advisory board, we'll be using this listserv to announce when we do a full-on webinar like this for our entire division to update you. But we'll also be doing other webinars and distributing brochures, other important updates from the division on this listserv. So you can get updates here regularly from us. I would expect you would see something at least once a month from us, and webinars at least quarterly. Next slide. These are a couple examples of what I think are some pretty awesome updates to our previous pollinator outreach. We have had a brochure on how to protect bees from pesticides for over 10 years. That was updated. It's now called How to Protect Bees from Pesticides, a Homeowner's Guide. That's really the focus of this brightly colored brochure. And we also did it with a Spanish translation that is available. If anybody needs large quantities of these, please let us know. We'll be distributing them at research events and pre-license events coming in the next year. Additionally, Savannah worked on these Be Safe Gardener and Landscaper postcards. They're larger than a standard postcard. They're easy to read. They give you the 4 main things. And I wish I had one in front of me so I could tell you exactly what they say. But anyway, they are available as well. There's more detail on the back of this postcard. The intent is for the pollinator coordinator, Katie Buckley, to take these with her to different meetings, to distribute to nurseries and to the fairs next year. They're also available in English and Spanish, and I think they're just great. Thank you, Savannah. Next slide. And then I'll pause here for any questions for me related to administration, what we're doing with legislation rules, or the division in general. before we take a quick break, and then we'll come back, and I'll be back for our question session as well. So if you want to ask questions at the end, please feel free to do that and stay on with us for another 45 minutes or so, half hour, to finish this up. Or no, I guess an hour and a half. I'm sorry. It's 10:30. I haven't reset my clock in my office.
Hi, Robin. This is Tina.
Hi, Tina.
There are a couple questions in the chat.
Okay, great. Oh, I see them.
Yeah, the first one is, so just so that I can read for anyone that's called
Please.
in or anything. It says, Robin, you aren't requesting a lot of changes this session, but have made several in recent years. Will the legislature be doing any work sessions or hearings to hear reports on how you're implementing the changes, like staffing increases previously authorized?
Thank you. That question's from John Devaney,
Yeah.
head of the Washington State Tree Fruit Association. John, I'm glad you're here. And yes, I can tell you that we will be doing updates to the legislature related to those work sessions, and also from the updates from our legislation where we did receive additional funding. We're actually working on those reports currently, and they'll be submitted to the legislature. The one about where the funding for license increases went. Like, as you know, quite a bit of that was passed on to WSU, and so we'll talk about that. We'll also give a detailed report on the budget and how that will work over the next 10 years for those increase in licensing fees. And then we're also required to give some updates on what's going on in registration. I know that we have improved our speed at which we're doing registrations because of the new staff we've hired in registration. But I don't have that in front of me right now, but that will be going over to the legislature as part of that report. It will also be posted on our website and updated. I can't remember if we decided on it. I think it's every 6 months. We already have information that we posted last summer on how long registration turnarounds take. I would expect that to be improving quite a bit, as we did add 2 new positions to registration to help with the speed at which we do registrations, as well as moving the science toxicologist position into our division. Did that answer your questions, John? Yeah. Okay.
There is one more question from Kevin Shoemaker. The question is for anyone that called in. You mentioned a number of agencies involved in water monitoring, specifically for dairy nutrient. What agency, if any, is going to be lead on PFAS being found in water, soil, pretty much everywhere?
So PFAS and PFOS, those chemicals that have been in the news a lot over the last 2 years. The primary agency that regulates any contaminants in water and soil for the state of Washington is the Department of Ecology. They work with the counties on that. I think federally it is EPA. Our division and our agency work with them, but primarily we work on pesticides only. There are very few pesticides that have in those as ingredients. Although there has been some low levels found in some pesticides due to the they apply a coating to the inside of some plastic containers that contain PFAS and PFOS, and so those can end up in soil or water from applications, but that is a minor thing compared to the contamination that's ongoing in other areas related to actual chemicals that are produced to have those in them. And those are mostly firefighting compounds that were used in large amounts on military bases. So there will be agencies, a number of them involved with this water monitoring. I would expect the lead for that in the state of Washington to be ecology. And as I said, everything that we work on related to those with pesticides, we'll be working with them. We're looking at any pesticides we have in our state that have those as ingredients, whether it be considered an inert in the past or currently as an active. There's a very limited number of those. So I think that's going to be an easy thing for us to fix from our end related to pesticides. In terms of where it is in our state in water quality or in water monitoring, I don't know, and we aren't the lead for that, but we'll be working with ecology and the counties and anyone else to help with that as we can. Kevin, does that answer your question?
He said yes.
Great, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for the question. And feel free to give me a call anytime if you'd like more information. George Tuttle is one of the leads in the agency, our toxicologist, who is working on that with us. We're engaged with EPA also at the national level on that. And looking at it again from that ag perspective related to pesticides and or fertilizers that we also regulate. I wouldn't expect there to be a large problem with that in dairies. It's really more of an issue of, where we've had contaminated soil from overuse of those chemicals in other industries. So anyway, let's take a quick break. Savannah, I'll let you announce how long that is and when we'll be back.
Great. Yeah. So our break is 15 minutes. We're right on time. So we'll come back at 10:45. And then we can start Scott's presentation on the penalty matrix updates. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, we'll be back at 10:45.